With me today is Brian Curtis, who owns the Curtis Realty Group in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I won't tease you about being the king of real estate, I promise. So Brian crushes it, man. He did over 250 transactions last year. My hunch is he'll break over 300 this year. So we absolutely love Brian. And he's one of our Club Wealth coaches as well. He's a Tier 4 Club Wealth coach. So he knows how to help people get where they're going. Mike Bjorkman also on the call with us today. There's Mr. Bjorkman waving at you. Mike looks like he's in the witness protection program, which makes sense.
I'm in the dark office. This is our Zen room.
That's awesome. So check it out. So Bjorkman is literally what we call out of production. That's a big deal. And what that means is essentially his team runs without him. And, he spends about an hour a week on his team, and his team is doing $1.5 million in GCI per year. So that's a pretty impressive feat. And along with that, he's running his property management company with 750 doors. He's running his 3 real estate offices. And he's got an escrow company doing really, really well as well. So welcome, Mike Bjorkman. And then, of course, our guests today. We've got 3 very special guests today. One of whom is on dial-up, so he'll be in and out today. And that's Doug Holladay. We absolutely love Doug. Doug is our personal and financial well-being coach, and so he does a lot of our investment coaching here at Club Wealth. And so Doug is a very creative investor, does some really neat things with investing in real estate, does not like to flip properties. He's a buy and hold guy. He buys real estate but does not believe in selling it. Hey, look at that. He found better internet in his car than his office. I love it. I'm sure your team So there's Doug, he aka Santa Claus. And then we've got Mr. Ken Crotts, who I've known for many, many years. Ken is insane. Wave to us, Ken. There's Ken right there. So Ken Crotts does a lot of flipping properties and is very, very successful at it. I would say Ken's average flip, he's doing between $50,000 and $100,000 in profit on his average flip. So pretty anxious to hear what he has to say today. And then, of course, Mr. Trong Dang. Trong, arguably one of the most successful investors on the call today. He is crazy successful in investing in real estate. Has done a great job. He does flip properties. All right, so that being said, let's get right into it. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike and Brian, and I'm going to let you guys start asking questions of these guys. But let's talk about what does it take to invest in real estate today. Here we are in a very competitive seller's market where it's very challenging to buy properties at a decent price. So, guys, who wants to hit this?
I'll jump in. You guys probably saw my post. Doug is a longtime friend of mine and mentor, and Doug and I have traveled this country together, and I've learned a lot from him. And where he lives in Boise has some of the most unique investment opportunity available, affordable property, and he does a lot of stuff, strip malls, mini storage, and things like that. And Doug, I'd like to hear from you and your, million years of experience, and let our viewers understand your philosophy and your theory behind real estate investing. How much is it of single family and how much is it of commercial versus multifamily?
So just to give you a little bit of background, I have done a tremendous amount of fix and flips over the years. The reason I stopped doing fix and flips is because of the fact that I had some really good years doing it, and I found that at the end of the year, the next year, I always got a tax bill. And I'll tell you, there's nothing that I hate worse than paying taxes. So I don't mind paying my fair share, but I don't want to pay everybody else's fair share too. And so, when you look at the fix and flips, I looked at it and says, yeah, I can make, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on a home, but in my tax bracket, I was giving half of it to the government, the next year. So that kind of took the fun out of it for me. And I started looking at it and going, it doesn't make sense. I can take these same homes and or properties and hold them long term and, be able to depreciate them out. And it gained me a lot of tax benefits. So I quit paying so much in taxes, but the greatest thing is my income keeps going up and up and up. So really, when I look at what my mix is, I don't like my residential properties to be any more than about 10% of my overall portfolio. My wheelhouse is really industrial, light industrial, some retail. Mostly I do the retail for my own purposes, because what I like to do is start my own businesses within the retail market. I've got a number of businesses that I can put into my retail units, and they buy the units for me. I really do believe in the Ray Kroc theory of buying property. Most of you know who Ray Kroc was. He was the not necessarily the founder of McDonald's, but really he's the guy who took McDonald's from the McDonald's brothers hamburger stand to the McDonald's that we know today. And his philosophy was, everybody would think, well, you're in a hamburger business, and his philosophy is, no, I'm in real estate business. Before he died, he owned some of the most expensive property in the world because of his hamburger stand, purchasing those properties for him. It also allows me to do a lot of different things. I can take the profit out of my companies through passive income rather than active income. So I can avoid all of the self-employment taxes that you're going to have to pay on those various properties. So that's kind of my philosophy. Why I do what I do, the unit mix that I like. I own 2 property management companies. One, we do about 2,500, we manage about 2,500 properties. I own a small one that I run my mini storages through and whatnot. But surprisingly enough, and this might surprise a lot of you, I don't manage my own properties through my own property management company. I actually hire a different property management company who I helped get into business to manage my personal properties. I've been audited 8 times in my career, and I've learned, what to avoid. Plus, if I give myself a discount, the IRS can come back and say, hey, that's self-dealing. And if I go to the other people and say, look, this is what I'm going to pay you, then that's just fine.
So Doug, one real quick question that I have for you is, you did one of the creative things that you've done in mini storage, but in your industrial buildings, your small retail buildings, you've had salons. You've actually created your own hair salons and these things. Clearly not a regular client, but definitely you have these salons in place where they're creating a lot of cash flow for you in these buildings. Is that right?
Yeah, in fact, I can take a strip mall or a building and basically open up I call them self-service spas. They're not self-service from the customer standpoint. They're self-service from my standpoint. So I don't hire a receptionist. All I do is put in a phone system, and then I rent out the booth space. And I can rent out, and every market's going to be different. In my market, we rent them out for about $125 a week. Got a market in Atlanta that's $200 a week. So various markets around the country are going to be different. But the beautiful thing about it is if you can put 15 to 20 girls in there, or guys, I've got barbers as well in there and massage therapists, but if you can rent those out, say at $150 a week, that's on average about $600 a month per person. So you take 15 of them, you can do the math and figure out that one space will pay for your all of the maintenance and all of the debt service on the building. And then anything else that you put in that building is just gravy.
Love it. All right, so let's do this. I want to jump to Ken and Trong as well. So we're going to come back to you, Doug, with questions in a moment. But let's go to And Ken, tell us about the type of investing that you're doing, and tell us kind of, what your strategy is and how you're making sure that you're making money on all these flips you're doing. Because I know that there's a lot of people out there that lose money on flips.
Yeah, well, I've sold a lot of their properties for them as short sales in the past decade or so. So, money is made on real estate when you buy it. Our particular strategy is I'm a guy that's on the phone a lot, so I call notice of trustee sales, notice of defaults for sale by owners, and you'd be surprised. You find properties, if you're talking to people every day about selling their houses, if you have your radar on, those good deals will come along. And there are some people that are willing to sell at a discount just to avoid the hassle of having people come through their house. And the way that I do a comment, I don't like being a landlord. I think it's in part because I deal with every tenant that I've dealt with, not every, but a lot of them that I deal with are trashing my clients' houses, and they're just very difficult to work with. So I don't like dealing with tenants, so I flip the houses instead. Our particular strategy to avoid the taxes, as Doug was mentioning, I mean, that's a real cost, is I've set up a self-directed 401k. So most of the properties that we buy are bought within the 401k. So we don't get any tax write-offs or benefits. Well, we don't get any write-offs, but we don't pay any taxes on it either. So it's a great way to grow our retirement tax-free. And that's it's a pretty common strategy if you look into it. So I've also been pretty successful buying properties on online auctions. We're putting a house on the market in Cle Elum this week that we bought using my wife's cell phone at an online auction. We bought it for $230,000. We put about $160 in, and it's going on the market for $600,000. So that'll generate probably $160,000 or $80,000 net profit. But I think you've got to be willing to dig for the properties, and that particular property, the reason it was a good deal is and this is something to key in on, is I noticed that the bank had a section on the website that said the prior value was $280,000. Well, that was wrong. I knew that was way low. I don't know where they got that number, but because they undervalued that property significantly in the past, they undervalued it in the future, and we were able to get it for a really low price. And I found that for the online auctions, if you really pay attention to them, look for inaccuracies in the online auction display sheets, and see how they're valuing the property. Sometimes that's where we've been finding our online deals. And
that's good stuff. Awesome, Mike, Brian, any questions for Ken?
Yeah, so let me just ask. I think my role on here is always to try and dumb this down a little bit. I'm not sure how I ended up with that role, but so let me take it back. I appreciate self-directed IRAs, but most people don't know. I'm going to guess that probably 80% of these people on the call are not dealing with self-directed IRAs, and I appreciate what Doug's doing as well. He's got an amazing program. But what about the guy who's like, okay, I'm a real estate agent, or I'm not a real estate agent. I've just want to get started, and where's the simple, easiest way to get started? Maybe I'm not looking to have a $600,000 property, Ken. That's awesome, and I'm sure you're going to kill it on that. But what if I just want to make $20,000? What if I'm just trying to get started, dip my toe in the water? What's your suggestion for any of you guys to get started in that?
Hook up with a great agent.
Okay.
For one, well, seriously, to invest in properties, you need to have access to them.
Sure.
And if you're not an agent, then you're going to be beating the street and driving around and looking for properties with tall grass. There are a lot of zombie property. We're in Seattle, the hottest market in the country, and there's still a lot of zombie properties. And those are properties that are literally abandoned. It's very often the seller doesn't know they still own it, and the bank's unwilling to foreclose on it. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have to have resources to be able to investigative resources to dig in and locate numbers and resources to find those owners and contact them. So it's a lot of legwork to find these properties, but you just have to really start digging in and locating properties, and you're really going to shortcut the process if you find an agent that has the resources that can locate and contact these sellers and negotiate a deal with them, or convince them to do a short sale or a private sale.
I'd have to agree with Ken on that, because the biggest question I get when I work with a lot of my clients is, well, what keeps you from taking all the good deals? And the answer is, well, yeah, we're going to take a few good deals, but we're not going to take them all. Nobody can take them all. And a good agent that's doing it all the time is going to be looking out for their clients. They're going to know what each of their clients' wheelhouse is, what they like. There's certain things that Ken does that I'm just not comfortable with. Not that I couldn't do them, I just don't want to. And so all of those deals that I'm going to come across that aren't in my wheelhouse, you know, it would be nice to have somebody that we can pass those to and help them with. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that's a good example where you could just flip those off to somebody like a Ken or a Trong. So speaking of Trong, tell us, what's your model? What are you doing? How successful have you been with it? Tell us your backstory.
What's my model? Well, I flipped to increase my income to buy rentals. So that's what my goal is to get more rentals. Because the way I see it is, you know, I want to retire early. I don't want to be in my 60s and 70s and still out there prospecting, door knocking, and you know, mailing. I want to retire in my 40s and 50s. So with rentals, I can accomplish that. And you know, down the road, that could just be you know, 30 years once the renters pay off the loan, then it would just be mine, and I can pass it down to my generation, to my kids, give them a starter home. But yeah, I flipped to get more income.
So when you say you flip to get more income, so you're buying fixer-uppers, fixing them up, and then using those as long-term rentals. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, like Ken and Doug, we were out there with every single angles that we can get, you know, to prospect and find these homeowners. For me too, I go, you know, contact NODs and notice of trustee sales. They're more motivated to work with you. But just being out there, and let people know that you're doing this, that you're an investor, that you're buying. Eventually, you know, things will come back, people will refer back, and deals just appear.
That's it's a really interesting comment. I think that I would agree with that, and I bet Doug and Ken would also agree that when you put it out there and people start to get to know you as an investor, yes, you're a real estate agent, but you're an investor as well, and you put it out there, you're going to investment groups, you're showing up at the auctions, and you're contacting other real estate agents in the area that you know deal with investment properties, and sometimes these folks will come up with a deal. It's kind of like, you know, having multiple lead sources for your real estate business. You've got multiple lead sources for finding investment properties. Is that right?
That's
I
correct.
agree.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing too is that it's just not, you know, looking for the deal. It's to be creative with the deal to maximize the profit. I think that's probably what I specialize in the most, because I'll buy anything that's a good deal. Now, you know, I don't buy something to turn around and sell it, but if I can trade it out and it makes sense, I'll trade up all the time. You know, the last 2 years I've made 2 particular deals. One last year that will net me about $1.2 million, and this year a deal that I originally thought I was going to net about 300,000 on, but I'm already. It looks like going to net about 660,000 on it, and possibly even more. But I don't look at that as a net income, because what I'm looking at is taking that investment and turning it into an income stream that will pay me over a period of time for the rest of my life.
That's a common thing I'm hearing between you and Trong. And Mike and Brian, I don't want to monopolize. If you guys have questions, and by the way, for you that are watching right now, type into your screens, you know, wherever you're seeing this feed, type your questions in there. As always, every question that gets asked from people on our Facebook feeds, you're going to get one entry into our Hawaiian vacation giveaway drawing. And for the person that asked the best question, you're going to get 5 entries into that drawing. So that being said, what I'm hearing as a common theme is that you guys are buying for cash flow, which is huge. And I agree with that. I like that a lot. And not that I don't agree with Ken's model, where Ken is flipping the properties and making a huge profit on those properties. But I do believe that everybody that's watching this needs to be building a rental portfolio. And if I could be, if all you get out of this today is that one thing, it's a victory. And I would recommend that you all read a couple of books. One, you need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And 2, you need to read The Richest Man in Babylon. And I think you guys really need to understand the principles in those books. But go ahead, Mike, you were going to add something.
Yeah, this is a really good time to, that's a good segue into what I know Doug does, because I know him well, but we should talk about some of the financing. Sometimes as self-employed real estate agents, it's hard for us to qualify. Ever since I was brand new in the career, I did AITDs, which is all-inclusive trust deed, subject twos, land contracts. How many of you guys are buying that way and assuming loan subject to and minimizing your down payment when it's not necessary?
I do. I bought 3 homes in December, all of them subject twos. People that for various reasons just wanted to get out of the homes, and I'll go in and take a look at their equity and take a look at the overall property, and tell them this is what this is what kind of cash I'll give you to do a subject to, and then I simply put the home in an LLC with the homeowner's name. So if it was Joe Smith that I bought it from, and that's who he's got the mortgage through, I put it in an LLC, Joe Smith LLC with the property address, and then I own that with my master LLC, which is DLH Properties, and so a lot of people are afraid of that, and they're like, well, what if the bank calls the note? Well, number one, if you're making the payments, the bank's never going to call the note. Number 2, likelihood is if they do ever check into it, it's going to see that it's got the original owner's name in an LLC. They're just going to make the assumption that it's him that's done it. So, but my experience, and I've been doing this since 1978. Is that a bank will never call a loan as long as payments are being made.
Yeah, I've never seen one either. And we went through after the '94 earthquake doing them. We went through the recession doing them. And the banks have plenty of things to do besides foreclosing on homes that aren't delinquent. So that was one of the things I wanted to stress is don't worry about that. And it's sometimes it's so much better to buy that way because we don't have to put the 20-30% down payments. I've had times where I've walked into the client and said, look, I'll take it subject to, I'll just pay the closing costs, and I've jumped into a property with positive cash flow, and they're perfectly happy. And you can always have an escrow account saying, hey, I'll keep $10,000 in this account or $5,000, and if I ever go delinquent, it'll automatically come out of this account. So there's a lot of ways you can make them feel comfortable. But typically they go, hey, you're in the business, I trust you, and we'll go from there. And if they say, why do you want to do that? Why would you as a real estate agent want to do that? I've always just said, look, I'm into this for the long term. You want to get out of this property. I want to get into long-term properties, and we can have somebody else making the payments, and you don't have the stress of it. So I have several land contracts, several AITDs, and they work out really well. And we've had a couple in the last couple of years that we've actually made 30-40 grand on in a year, and only put maybe $1,000 or $2,000 into the transaction to pay for the escrow documents to be handled, and works out really well.
So let's I get a couple of questions on this. So first of all, Sandy wants to know, Sandy Stites, shout out to David and Sandy Stites. Love you guys, and awesome Club Wealth members down there, and coach as well. David's a Club Wealth coach. But Sandy wants to know more about where you're getting those AITDs, Mike.
Typically, honestly, it's people that call me that want to sell their house, and they just don't have the equity there, or based on our relationships with banks and REO back in the recession, and we used to make it quite public that we were investors, they still call, and other agents, believe it or not, will say, hey, Mike likes to buy property, why don't you call him? And I'll kick them back a little bit of referral fee if they send us transactions as well. But the real estate agents really are the best way.
Okay, so we got a couple more questions from folks on the page here. Love it. By the way, keep them coming, you guys. I love these questions. Tracy asked what I think, Tracy Ellman asked a really, really good question. And I know the reason for this, but Doug, I'm going to throw it back to you for quick clarification. Why have one LLC, your main LLC, buy the LLC that is in the name of that homeowner? So, you know, the Joe Smith 123 Main Street LLC. Why would you have yours buy that one?
The reason is for protection. Each LLC is set up individually, so that's a form of protection. Then my master LLC controls all of the other LLCs. So it's just another level of protection so that nobody can get to me personally.
Right. There you go. The other thing is the reason why, and Tracy, I'm forward thinking what your next question might be is why not just buy everything in your main LLC's name? And the reason for that is because you want that LLC when you buy that property subject to, and so you're literally just quit claiming that property into an LLC that's named Joe Smith 123 Main Street LLC. That is to discourage or dissuade the bank from calling that note due as long as you're making those payments. If you were just if that quit claim were to happen into, you know, the Doug Holladay LLC, it's a red flag to the bank at that point. They're going to say, hey, wait a minute, did a transfer happen here? Whereas if you're just transferring it into an LLC and you keep making those payments, the chances are they're probably not going to call the note due. And if they do, what do? What's the backup plan? What happens if they do call that note due? Well, that's when you contact somebody like me or you know, another investor, and they come in and they just cash it out. Or at that point, Doug is, you know, for him, he's got the bandwidth to just cash them out himself. But if you don't have the bandwidth to do that, then call Doug, call me, call one of us, and we'll just cash it out. And you know, we get a good deal, you get a good deal, you made some arbitrage on it, and everybody's happy. So. All right. Next question is Cindy Mason was asking about those self-directed IRAs, and we're going to go to Ken for this. So Ken, are these self-directed IRAs good for real estate agents? That's Cindy's question.
I think they're good for everybody. IRAs, the IRA statutes give you broad latitude in terms of what you can invest in. In fact, there's only 3 or 4 things you can't invest in as an IRA. So if you can roll your IRA or your retirement investments into a self-directed IRA or a self-directed 401k, as mine is, and literally get checkbook control. You have to observe you have to be very astute and diligent about not, you know, commingling funds or anything like that. But for me, I love it because you know, instead of paying, you know, 40% taxes on the properties that we're buying, I'm increasing my yield by 40% on these houses that we're flipping. So there are a lot of companies that can do it. It's not difficult. In my case, I have a 401k that owns an LLC, and the LLC is the entity that does the purchasing and sales, and I'm a signer for the LLC. But I know Entrust up here in this area in Seattle does it, and there are companies across the country that will set up a self-directed IRA or LLC or IRA or 401k. The one thing I'd be careful of is you want to make sure that if you're going to get into that you have an investment strategy and that you have the freedom to be able to operate and make those investments freely without having to go to the company every time you need to cut a check to make an investment or to pay an expense.
Another thing that's critical with self-directed IRAs is they have to be cash positive. You're not legally allowed to have a self-directed IRA that has a negative cash on a month-over-month cash on cash return. So you have to be positive on that for every single month. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
One of the things that I found a way around that is, and you're right, I use Entrust too, is probably the same company, probably the same rep Ken uses. They're really good. And Michael, by the way, they'll do webinars with you for free for Club Wealth. So they have really good training. You agents out there that don't have self-directed IRAs, I posted the website in the feed. But you should go there and go to the learning section because they teach a lot. But one of the ways I've gotten around a lot of this stuff is I found out probably 10 years ago I couldn't afford to buy this piece of commercial property. So I used half of my self-directed IRA and then half of it I bought. So you can buy individually, and your IRA can buy as well. So
you can partner.
Yeah, so we were having cash calls, and I was putting in the money from myself for the cash calls, and then the IRA was just left alone to sit there. So it worked out really well, and the CPA thought it was genius, and I've been doing that way ever since.
So one of the things, if you guys are interested in having us do a webinar specifically on self-directed IRAs, go ahead and just type IRA webinar, self-directed IRA webinar, something like that. Type that into the screen, and we will go ahead and if we get enough feedback from people wanting that, we'll go ahead and do it. So let's keep moving on to some more strategies. So Trong, I want to go back to you for a moment. So Trong, tell us, what do you look for when you buy a property? How do you know that this is something you want to invest in, that you feel like it's going to make a good investment for you long term?
Like Doug said, when you buy, you make money when you buy too, not when you sell. So you gotta buy it right the first time, and you work backward from there. You have to determine your exit strategy. Do I want to keep this, or do I want to flip this? And if I flip this, how much can I sell it for? And work backward from there and estimate how much do I need to put into this property to repair it, and then determine if I want to keep this or not. For rentals, a lot of the rentals I keep because I bought it low, and I just want to make sure that when I buy it low, that my mortgage and my rent is going to my rent's going to cover my mortgage.
Okay, so let's talk about that. This is important because it's not probably just that it will cover it, but are you making sure that you have cash flow, and how much cash flow do you look for? I mean, let's just for easy numbers, let's say that my mortgage payment is, or rather, I can rent a property out for $1,000 a month. What do I want my mortgage payment to be?
I look for at least $200-300 difference, so that I have a cash flow of at least $200-300 per month per properties. So that it's recession proof. If something were to happen, if the tenant move out, if I have turnover every year, at least it'll be cover itself. It will cover itself, and I don't have to worry about it.
And Ken, how about you? I know you've got a formula for that as well, and then we'll do Doug. I want to know your formula.
Yeah, well, I never buy a property without a plan B. So none of the properties we've ever purchased, we couldn't turn around and either VRBO or rent it out and make a cash flow, because you cannot count on appreciation or this market going the way it's going. So if you do get caught and the market changes, you got to be able to rent the property out for cash flow. And I do have a little spreadsheet that I use on a regular basis for every investment property. I'd be happy to share it with you guys, but it really goes in. You have three numbers you need to know: the acquisition price, the repair or fixed price, and then the as repaired price, the final sale value. And it's very important to know those. And one of the things I think that new investors make a big mistake on is they don't also properly account for the cost of financing, especially if they're using something like hard money. So the spreadsheet I use is very simple, but it's just made to be used on the fly on my phone. So as I go buy a property, we can do quick calculations. And I can tell you the average property that we work on, if we're just doing a surface fix without a kitchens and maybe just one bathroom, you can figure $20,000 to $30,000 in repairs. If you're doing kitchens or getting into roofs and whatnot, we figure $40,000 to $50,000. And if you're doing a full-blown deal and changing some walls and making some major repairs, you figure you can redo a house for about $70,000 inside. And to Brian's earlier point, the person that wants to make just make $20,000 or $30,000, make sure you have a plan B and you can rent it if you get held up. And secondly, if you're going to do a property and make just a $20,000 profit, that's a really, really thin margin. So that would only be a property where you're just doing paint and counters and carpet, really simple stuff. Don't get into a major remodel where you're tearing out walls and figuring you're going to have a $20,000 margin, because as soon as you open up that wall, that $20,000 flies out like termites.
Amen.
And, so be careful.
That's a very good point, Ken. I want to jump in real quick before I forget. Ken, for those of you that would like it, if you guys would like to see Ken's Crotts Deal Analyzer spreadsheet. Type in spreadsheet into the comments. And Ken, would you do me a favor? Could you get that over to Natasha? And for those people that want it, what we'll do is we'll make it a download when we post this on our website, because we always post our Club Wealth TV episodes on the website. So as soon as we do that, Ken, with your permission, we'd love to share your spreadsheet as a free download there on the website. Trong, do you have something similar?
Yeah, I do. I have something similar that works for me in my numbers.
Okay. Would you be willing to share that as well?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll be happy to.
Awesome. If you guys will get that over to Natasha, we'll make sure those are both included in the download. And how about you, Doug? What do you look for? And then also, do you have a spreadsheet of some kind that you use to analyze your opportunities?
I don't use a spreadsheet at all. I'm pretty old school. I look at.
Are you still using the abacus?
An abacus, and I'm pretty good at it. But every piece of property I buy, I start with the end in mind before I even purchase it. And that doesn't mean that I know exactly what I'm going to do, but I know what value it's going to bring to me over a 20-year period. So I'll sit down and I'll look 20 years out, and I'll work backwards and analyze it, because of the fact that I don't sell property. I don't care what it is. I don't sell it. I'll trade it, or well, I shouldn't say I never sell a piece of property, because the deal that I just picked up, I am going to sell the house, because selling the house off of the entire deal is going to pay back the note. And by the way, I never use my own money. I hate using my own money. That's to me, that's a big no-no. I'm very much into opium, and I deal in opium on a regular basis. And to me, opium is one of the best drugs that are out there, and can make you the most money if you deal in opium. So,
and all evidence to the contrary, what he's really talking about is other people's money, not the actual, opium.
That's right. Anybody that doesn't know what opium is, I know that it used to be something that people would take to make them feel good. But let me tell you something. Other people's money, I can take that and make me feel a lot better. But in using other people's money, it allows you to put these deals together. I am going to sell off the house on this one note, and I'm going to still end up with the potential. Well, I got an immediate value of $400,000 out of it, but the potential that I'm working on now will actually net me out probably about $2 million over the next 20 years.
So, Doug, I'd love to talk about other people's money, and I'd also like to talk about down payments. I think there's a myth out there that most people feel that you absolutely positively have to have 20, 30, 40% down to get in the investing world. And even if you're not, doing things like Mike was talking about earlier, but, for any of you guys, maybe answer this question: what are the things that I can do as a brand new investor that says, I don't have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, but I want to get into this? What would you guys suggest somebody does?
Well, let me give you just a short example. This particular deal that I worked on, I needed to come up with $380,000 cash. And so basically what I did is I went to a hard money lender, and I went to them and I says, okay, this is what I need. They looked at the deal and they said, well, wait a minute, where's your skin in the game? And I says, it doesn't matter that I don't have skin in the game. This is what I can net out of it if I were to sell it out. So they went in and sent in several appraisers that, called me up and says, well, what's your plans? And I was able to show them, what I was going to net. So literally I went back, the hard money lender called me back and says, oh yeah, we'll do this deal for you. There was nothing out of my pocket to do it. They did it. Now I'm going to have to pay a little bit more in interest,
but it doesn't matter because it's going to be paid back really fast from when I sell that house. So there are deals out there, and I do them every year. So, you know, for people to come back and say, well, I can't do it, it's because you're not thinking out of the box. I mean, you have to sit down and look at a piece of property and say, okay, how can I make money on this property? What can I do to maximize the money that I can earn from this property? You know, I'm to the point in my life now with the properties that I have goals that I set for myself. I want to increase my monthly income by $5,000 per month, year over year. The beautiful thing is that I'm to the point now where I can raise my rents that much. So anything that I buy out and over and above that, you know, is just gravy.
So we've got a question for Trong. Lewis Prahl's got a great question. Trong, what type of property do you recommend for someone looking to acquire rental property to hold long term, but is just getting started?
Probably just a single rambler, if you can find it, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That will appeal for most renters out there. Easy to rent out and it's easy to maintain with a rambler.
All right, I like that. And that's why we used to buy a ton of those. Now, are you doing any 4-bedrooms? You ever jump into 4-bedrooms?
If it comes, yeah, we'll buy them all. Yeah, if it comes.
Okay, so I want to jump
a rambler
about another.
The one-story house.
Oh, okay.
I'm with you there. I always like buying single stories as well, and for a lot of reasons, because you know sometimes like you can rent it to handicapped folks, and it opens up your pool of potential tenants. One of the places that we found great tenants, and I know a lot of people are going to freak out when I say this, but we did a lot of Section 8. You know, at one point I had 42 rental properties that were almost entirely rented out to Section 8, and companies that provide special needs services for things like people with brain trauma and those types of things, where my tenant is actually an entity, not an individual. And I've had really, really good success with that. I'm just wondering, are any of you guys doing anything like that?
Senior housing is huge out here. We have a very shortage on senior housing, and that's getting to be a really big deal out here. So I'm definitely going to look into that more. There are people buying 5- and 6-bedroom homes and you know, big 1-stories and turning them in. They're making a killing. They could rent them out, you know, $3-4 grand a room per month. Just cash flow is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Blazon Samuels asked a good question. What do you guys recommend on your buy and hold stuff? What state or area is best right now for buy and hold?
You know, I like the area that you're familiar with. I mean, you know, I own properties in about 3 states, but the 2 states that I'm the most familiar with is Georgia, because I own a home there and a ranch, and Idaho. You know, I've got some properties in Nevada, but guess what? I'm not there. I don't understand the market on a day-to-day basis. So I like to buy properties where I can get to them fairly quick. I understand the market and I know what's going on.
Yeah. Trong?
Well, to add to Doug, you know, what you're comfortable, the area that you're comfortable in, that you know the market, you know the people that's going to rent from you, you understand them and where they come from. So, yeah, just where you're comfortable in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, one of the things I consider when I'm buying rental property is I have rental property all over the country, and it's for a reason. And I like to be able to put my fingertips on, and like Doug, I like to understand my market. So I try to buy where I have a lot of good friends or people that I know. And the reason here is we went through the '94 earthquake, and I had a lot of investor clients of mine lose everything overnight. These condos and places were red tagged, and nobody would make their payments, and they lost all their investments. So I learned really quickly after that, don't do that, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I spread them around the country, where if there's a tornado in Dallas, where I have several, at least my California ones are okay. Or, you know, if there's a earthquake in LA, at least my Spokane and, you know, all the other ones that are spread out are okay. But I make sure they're not really expensive ones. I think the most expensive house we own is $200,000 out of the state of California. You know, a couple of the things I own in our own town are 400,000 or 500,000, but I won't go too much, because you're right. If you're not comfortable with the surroundings, you're not comfortable with the market, it's a little difficult. But I kind of like to buy in areas too that are stable, like the properties that we have in Dallas. I swear they might have gone up or down a penny in the last 5-6 years since we bought them, and I'm okay with that because it's long term. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm not looking for appreciation. I'm looking for the tenants to pay off the loans on those, and then they're little ATM machines when I retire. And the ones that I go after aggressively for flips are typically very close to me, things that I really know the market on. But I scatter them all over the country on purpose, everywhere from Florida to Maine to, you know, like we said, Spokane, and then back down here and in the middle. So I like to be very cautious with the rental properties and have a portfolio spread all over the place.
I love what you just said about you care more about having. I'm actually typing this into the chat now. That you prefer to have your when you buy, you're focused on, I want my tenants to pay off my mortgage and not to necessarily get appreciation. I think too often people have an investment strategy that's dependent on appreciation, and if your investment strategy is dependent on appreciation, it's only a matter of time until you're going to go broke. At some point, the appreciation is not going to be there. You know, at some point we're going to hit the shift in the market, and you're going to be standing there saying to yourself, oops, I should have been banking on cash flow and having my tenants pay off my mortgage instead of being dependent on appreciation. So
yeah. A lot of the states we bought in, even in the recession, they went down maybe 3 to 5%, where our Southern California market went down 30-40%. So it was pretty satisfying to watch our properties hold their value, keep our tenants in place, and not really stress out as much as a lot of people did in certain areas. Even the Phoenix market, the Vegas market, that we thought were really stable markets, actually crashed a lot harder than anybody ever expected. And some of my Texas properties and Louisiana, stuff like that, they were really, really mellow, and they just fluctuated slightly, and it wasn't a big stress case for me.
Yeah.
Well, for the rental game, it shouldn't matter how much you bought it for. It's only matter how much you can rent it out for. That's all that matters.
I love that.
Rents very seldom ever go down.
Say that again.
Rents very seldom ever go down, even if the property value dips. Rents very seldom ever go down.
That's right. Yeah, that is absolutely gold right there, you guys. I hope everybody heard that. So go ahead, Mike, Brian, what's next?
I just wanted to make sure, since we're coming to the end of this thing, we got to remember that real estate investing is the only inflation-proof commodity that we can buy ever. No matter what happens, when inflation goes up, rents will go up too, so you're covered. And we got to keep that in mind, because there's not another investment that is as safe as that. And so as real estate agents, we got to really invest in our own products.
Yeah, I would suggest that everybody needs to become their own best client. So, Brian, what about you? What are your thoughts? What do you want to hear from these guys in the few minutes that we have left?
You know, I love some of the things that both Doug and Ken and Trong have talked about. Tax strategies. I think that's important. I mean, I love the idea that Doug, and I've known Doug now for a while. I know that taxes are very important to him. I love it. I hate paying taxes, and I appreciate that. So, you know, maybe some tax strategies, because sometimes you buy investment property, like Mike said, to get the loan to pay off. But another thing you're doing is, you know, offsetting some of those other things I can depreciate. And so just any of those strategies I think would be great to know about.
The one thing that's interesting, estate agent, you can take your depreciation against your earnings. So because you're in the business, then all of your earnings are you can protect all of your earnings through depreciation. Where, let's say, Joe Blow investor comes in, you know, he can only deduct his depreciation and his interest expense up to the point of his profit. So in other words, if let's say he's got $1,000 a month rent, but his depreciation and interest are $1,200, then he can only deduct $1,000, and he has to carry over that extra $200. And because we're real estate agents and in that business, and it's all real estate related, we can take that extra $200 and actually deduct it off of our income.
That's a very big deal, and I hope everybody's really understanding this. Here's the thing: we do the same thing. I mean, when you've got a bunch of real estate and you're making a bunch, let's say you're making a bunch of money, and some of you are thinking to yourselves, "Man, I'm just struggling to make ends meet as a real estate agent right now, or I'm just getting started as an agent." Okay, I get it, but that's today. That's not going to be a forever thing. The whole idea, especially for those of you that are in coaching, you should be increasing your income. Well, as your income increases, so does your tax burden increase. Real estate, investing in real estate, you get to double dip. You get to not only make the profit on the real estate, but you get to deduct that interest that you're spending there against your actual income as a real estate agent. It is a very big deal. And you also get what's called a stepped up basis. So that's a whole other thing that we don't need to go into today. But what I want you to know is there's some great tax advantages to being a full-time real estate agent investing in real estate that nobody else gets. And by the way, the rest of the world's figured out that all of the advantages of buying real estate, even though they're not real estate agents, make it worth their purchasing real estate. Now it's even that much more lucrative for those of you that do sell real estate full time. So you guys, you need to be taking advantage of this. All right, here's the thing. We got 5 minutes left. Here's what we got time for. Brian, do you have any other thought on the tax thing, or are you ready for me to go to final thoughts?
You can go to final thoughts, and I'll start if you want.
Let's do that then. So here's what we're going to do, you guys. We're going to wrap it up today, and we're just going to go through each person on the call, and you're going to give us your biggest takeaway from today and/or your final thoughts. Rapid fire. Brian, go first.
Okay, so my final thought is right along the last thing that we just talked about. So to me, there's nothing more important than what we just learned at the end. And here's what you need to know. You don't necessarily need to understand it at the level that Ken understands it, Michael, or anybody else on this phone call. What you need to do is go out and find an accountant who understands what Doug just talked about. Just have somebody out there. You focus on finding the deals, selling real estate, and then again, don't be afraid to pay someone who's got their expertise to go out and explain all that tax stuff to you. And that is really the key to me, is just finding professionals to help you do this stuff is more important than trying to understand everything. You're never going to learn it all unless you spend tons and tons of time. So that's my takeaway, is that, do this stuff, but also get professionals to help you.
Love it. Doug?
Say that again.
Your rapid fire, your very quick final thought or takeaway from today.
Well, my final thought is that everybody really needs to look at what makes them comfortable. I know Ken is not comfortable with being a landlord. You know what? You don't have to be a landlord. I'm not a landlord. There's two reasons why I choose another company to manage my own properties and not my own property management company. Number one is it's pretty hard to fire yourself. And number two is because it does bring me some tax benefits and tax protection. But the thing is that don't plan on managing your own properties, or you're going to learn to hate life. Mm-hmm. And you will look for other strategies. That's another reason why I like light industrial. And by the way, you can get into light industrial with no money down, and you have so many more options and so much less liability. So that's my 2 cents worth there at the end.
I love it. Good stuff. Ken Crotts?
Boy, every time I love listening to Doug, because my takeaway is I got to run over here and check out this light industrial property that I identified after my last conversation with Doug. So I really appreciate the different strategies that everybody uses. I think investing is a personalized thing, so you do what's comfortable for you, and you watch your numbers. Just watch your numbers and make sure you know what you're planning on doing before you get in. So
get that spreadsheet on the download.
Yeah, the spreadsheet's coming. And you know what? Live by it, because if it is great, investing is great, but the one necessary skill you have to have, and I find with all investors, anybody who's investing has the cojones to pull the trigger when that deal makes sense. A lot of people will look and search and get into analysis paralysis. Have the guts to pull the trigger when the numbers say go, and don't look back.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Ken, I'll tell you what, I was in a situation one time where I was at an auction property. I was out in front of us in Federal Way. I know you and Ken Trong know where that's at. Here I am. I'm out in front of this. Excuse me. I'm at the auction, and I've got Tara out in front of the house. So I'm literally on the county court south steps, and I called Tara up, and I said, Tara, should I buy it? Do I do it or not? And I've got cash in my pocket. I've got cashier's checks in my pocket, ready to buy this thing. And she's like, well, I just don't know. I just don't know. And so I check it out. I didn't buy it. Well, then somebody else bought it. I go out and I look at it that week, and I end up buying it for $25,000 more than I could have bought it at auction. It was still a great deal, but oh my gosh, had we pulled the trigger, it would have saved me $25,000. So I agree with you. You got to have the cojones, as you put it. You got to have the stones to go out there and literally just got to make a decision and buy the property. So next, Mike Bjorkman, final parting thoughts.
My final parting thoughts, I think, basically looking at some of these comments and text messages, people don't want to be landlords. And I'll say something right now. I've never seen or talked to my tenants before, except for one time. And the one time I did, I let them stay for 6 months free and regretted it. And because I felt so bad, during the recession. So for all of you out there that think you need to be a landlord, you don't. You hire a professional and let them handle it. And that's the way to do it. And you treat it just like a business and have reserves, and don't worry about getting involved in that business, because you don't need to be involved if you don't want to be.
That's a very good point. I love it. All right, Tron, final thoughts, parting, biggest takeaways?
For me, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So as far as income wise, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket as well. So I want to create multiple sources of income. So if one goes down, I'll be okay for a while and until I get back up again. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So my final thoughts are this. First and foremost, you guys, you got to take action. There's no excuse to not take action. Now, you don't have to have your own money to invest in real estate. We talked about that. There's lots of ways that you can invest in real estate with other people's money and not having to use your own. That being said, you've got to take action. It doesn't have to be that you go out and buy $1 million property, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start buying something now so you can start building up your retirement income. And by the way, for those of you that are worried about how am I going to know that it's a good buy, there's a couple of things you can do. One, we're going to post this on the Club Wealth website. So it's clubwealth.com. We'll post it there, and we'll have the downloads right on the website for free, where you can get the spreadsheets that Trong and Ken are using to analyze their properties and analyze the deals that they're considering getting into. So go there and you can get that for free. Another thing you can do is you can reach out to us, reach out to Doug Holladay, and he is actually one of our investment coaches here at Club Wealth. So if you want to be able to do this, and maybe you've got a deal you need analyzed, maybe you just want to know, hey, this is what I got. You want him to analyze your situation. He would be very happy to do that. Reach out to Doug. There is a cost for that service, but Doug can walk you through that at that point in time. Final thing I'd like to share is, please, please, please remember, if you're not already, make sure you request to be added to the Club Wealth Real Estate Agent Mastermind group here on Facebook. And on that group, if you go to Facebook, search for Club Wealth Real Estate Agent Mastermind. We'd love to add you. We have all kinds of great free content on there. A lot of very, very smart people sharing some of the best ideas you're ever going to find anywhere with regards to real estate and occasionally real estate investing. So on behalf of everybody on the call, thank you guys so much for taking your time today to do this with us. This has been a great, great call. We're getting lots of great feedback. And so on behalf of everybody here at Club Wealth and everybody on the call, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And remember, you are world class.